Well, you might have given up on me today, but guess what? I'm here. And so is Peachy. Peachy is here as well. Aren't you, Peach? Come on over, baby. Come on over. Come on over. We got a new Astro cat in the making here. Come on. Come on. There we go. Yeah. Yeah. We have a new Astro cat in the making. There she is. Peachy the Astro cat. Now, Peachy the Astro cat is very different than Jasper the Astro cat. Now, Peachy the Astro cat is actually kind of otherworldly. Jasper the Astro cat is like an earth sage. He's got that Taurian earth sage energy. But Peachy the Astro cat might actually be from another world. She might actually be from another world. She's very different. It's a very different kind. Look at her. That's right. Very different kind of familiar here. I wonder what she represents in terms of my own personal development. Yeah, you like it up here, don't you? Where is the old codger? I don't know where he is. Man, it has become like cat fucking haven here. Let me tell you. We have this other cat. It's not even our cat. He belongs to the people that live behind us. And for the longest time, he's just been the biggest nuisance. All he does is come by here and eat the outside cat's food. And I decided to do something different with the outside cat. His name is Pippin. And I decided to, instead of chase Pippin away, I decided to open my heart to Pippin. And Pippin was so receptive. And you can just tell that Pippin feels left alone. So now he's here a lot more often. I don't know what it is, man. I'm a cat magnet. I never thought I'd become like the cat guy. It's kind of weird. Anyway, thanks for being here and thanks for being patient. Let's see, who do we have? We've got, of course, the lovely and talented one, Dr. Jonas, PB. Hi, PB. Zoli Shingo. Hi, Liddy Lou. I'll give you my mother update here quickly. Introspective woodworker, my man Ryan. What's going on, brother? Good to see you. The lovely Diane Evans is here. Julia A. Payne, good morning to you. Lepetius, always good to see Lepetius. Amy Gill. Third Eye Activated. Hey, Marge, DM me over on Twitter if you're up for it. Oh, LMM, Leela. She's here today. Good to see you. Oh, are you here to claim your territory now? You should see. It was like, was she in my fucking place? Was she in my fucking place? There's only one Astro Cat. Well, get over here. We have Astro Cat rivalry starting. Oh my God. Rainbows and butterflies. Maria de Ange. Misbehaving. All right, let's get into this since I'm way behind. Quick update for everybody who left all those wonderful messages over on yesterday's YouTube page. Thank you very much. My mother has come through the surgery and she is now the recipient of a pacemaker at the age of 85. The old Energizer Bunny takes a licking and keeps on ticking. I tell you, it's really fascinating to watch somebody's will to live really kick in. Man, I'm just like pretty blown away, actually. It's inspirational, I have to say. And I'll be honest with you, there are parts of my relationship with my mother, just like any offspring with their parent. There are parts of my relationship that in the past have not been very inspirational. And I'm sure she could say the same about me, just to be fair. So it is redeeming to see a quality like that in somebody who is a genetic uh, progenitor, to put it nicely. So it's inspiring. It's like, okay, well, if she can do that, well, what else? What else can be done, right, Jasper? Are you coming over here? Are you going to claim your spot? He's smelling around like, oh, she was here. That little bitch. She was here. Who does she think she is? Well, come over here. Come on. You know this is your turf. Come on. Let's go. Don't be shy. You've never been shy before. Come on. All right, here we go. Yeah. Yeah, she stepped in for you because you weren't here. That's what happens. That's what happens. If you're not here, you know, your little understudy will show up. She's right over there waiting in the wings. You want to say hi to everybody before we get into the weather? There you go. There's the Astro Cat, the original Astro Cat. There's only one. What are we going to call Peachy? We'll call her the Astral Cat. How's that? She's the Astral Cat. You're the Astral Cat. Oh, yeah, I know. You like a scratch. Okay. Why don't you just sit down there? All right. Again, thank you very much for all of your kind words. And there's your update for my mother. And my mother's kind of like this Michelin critic of hospital service. And I got to say, West Texan, you're getting a 5-star Michelin rating, according to my mother. Here's the weather. Okay. Now, is that it? No, that's our star of the day. That's our star of the day. I let the cat out of the bag. Hold on. There we go. Did anybody take my advice yesterday? Did you buy low and sell high? Which was kind of the order of the day. Let's do this. Let's bring it. There you go. Here's our weather for today. What do we got? Well, first of all, the show starts with Leo rising. So, of course, with Leo rising, we get the big time Leo cat energy. By the way, shout out to David Palmer. I haven't connected with David in a while. I hope you're doing well, David. Since we have Leo on the ascendant, a little tip of the cap to the old Leo King there. Okay, what do we got? We've got Sun, Mercury. We've got Juno. Ladies and gentlemen, we got a grand trine this morning. If I had a grand trine sound effect, I'd play it. And I think this is a very interesting grand trine. This is I believe, the last time, if I'm not mistaken, although I'd have to check my coordinates here, that the moon will be conjunct the south node. In fact, I'm almost positive that's the case. So let me zoom in here, and then we'll explore this aspect together. There it is, right there. So we have the south node just getting ready to transit into Libra, and so we have the true node at 1 Taurus. Of course, it makes the south node at 1 Scorpio. And I believe it's July 17th is when these nodes flip. So this is the last time we're going to have the moon conjunct the south node during this nodal cycle. And luckily, it's, well, it is a little stressed because we do have that Pluto square going on, and that's been happening for a minute. When we look at the south node, we look at the past, and I think it's an interesting exercise to just to kind of round it off, right? Like the nodes change every 19 and a half months. So we could just kind of round it off maybe a little bit to the last 2 years, although we're cheating a bit because we're adding 5 months, but just for the sake of demonstration, that we look at the last 2 years, which really takes us into 2021 and everything that's happened since 2021. And you could use this as an effect in your own life in a lot of ways. And that the South Node and the moon can be an augur for, especially during this grand trine position, for letting go. For letting go. I feel like with the moon in Scorpio, we're always keeping records around what's happened, who did who to what, the hurt, the so-called pain. I think this is a really interesting. It's an interesting day because tomorrow the moon moves off of the South Node and it'll still be in Scorpio, but it won't be there. Do I think that there should be some balancing of the books? Absolutely. 100%. And I think that's also kind of baked in here. It's a very interesting dynamic of letting go, I would say. And at the same time, making sure that you don't forget. I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. There's clearly a group of individuals who have practiced that art for, well, since 1948, where they have let go but have never forgotten. And I think that there is some inherent wisdom in that position. It feels that this is one of those days where you can be vulnerable, but also not be a victim, if that makes sense. Because all the Cancerian energy is still, quite receptive and quite open, and to some degree even emotional, because that's how we work with Cancerian energy. We're channeling our emotion, we're channeling our somatic expression. Saturn comes in and gives us leverage and ballast, and we're not wrong, right? Like, this is one of those kind of rare days astrologically where you're not wrong. You're not wrong for feeling how you feel about very specific things. And I would say there's some intensity. Let's be clear. Water. Oh, thank you. No, this is not what Astro Cats do. Astro Cats do not jump on the computer keyboard. You must learn. Jesus. It's really water. It's sort of like water is one of those elements in astrology that I think is quite dismissive, or it's dismissed as being like, hey. It's dismissed as being maybe too emotional, or no. If you really want to get into like something super intense, you dive into Aries, dive into Leo, or dive into the cerebro-electro intensity and eclecticism of Aquarius, right? I mean, so I think water, in many cases, people will say about Pisces, well, Pisces are flaky, they're all over the place, or undependable. Cancers, or they're too sentimental, too cloying. Scorpios they're too dark. They hold grudges, right? You get those kinds of superficial renderings of water, and it's almost as if the water signs are treated as almost secondary citizens at times. And I think there's some truth to that. But the one thing about water is that once it gets rolling, look out, it is a massive force. And there's massive force today in the air, massive force. I would say that on a what we would call a mundane level, or a quote unquote collective level, that we're going to see some things that are very, very interesting. Very interesting. I feel like we're headed into vox populi territory, that the voice of the people is a rising tide. So again, we're using a water metaphor for a day like this. The moon Pluto square is kind of intense, especially since the south node is, right at the beginning of Scorpio. I think this is one of those days where, on an individual level, if you're channeling your motion in the right direction, like I said earlier, it's a rising tide. That moon Pluto square could knock you off, right? So here's what I would say. This is tricky, but it would be a good yoga to practice today. Stay out of grudge. Don't get into the grudge energy. That's the moon Pluto square. Do not get into the grudge energy. But at the same time, don't deny what's been done, what's been said, and what's been lost. Because this is one of those days where it can be articulated very clearly, specifically, and emotionally. Like, anybody can sit down and talk about something and give you a somewhat analytical rendering of a situation. Like, that's not very hard. But when somebody does something like that and they start to share and speak about their experience or what happened, and then the emotion comes in. When I say emotion, I'm not talking about crying but there's a depth, there's an intensity, there's a soulfulness to what they're saying. There's a term, it's called gravitas, and today is a gravitas day. It is a gravitas day. And I would say, wherever you are, if you're in another part of the world, you're already kind of into your day. Now you're into your afternoon or evening, wherever you are. But this is one of those days where consider your words. Your words have meaning. And if you tap into the right emotional state and right emotional content, they can have profound meaning, very profound meaning. This is one of those don't sleep on this day. And I know that we all have conversations that we need to have with certain people. Today is one of those days, if you want to have a conversation about something that you need to clear emotionally, just don't get hung up on it. Like, because this happens to me sometimes, is I'll go into a conversation and I'll make a point and I'll kind of bring to the table what I need to bring to the table. But then there's this thing that is still in the back of my brain that I feel like I haven't really been heard, or the person that I'm talking with doesn't understand the depth of what I'm trying to say. And so then I just keep going in for like the kill shot. I keep bringing things up. The thing, it's like, if you hadn't heard it the first time, you're going to hear it the second time, and you're going to hear it the third time. Try not to do that today. Try to just state it once, state it clearly one time, but do it in a way that you don't have to restate it, right? And once you get into the flow, let it flow, and try to establish emotional connection with other people. This is a very important aspect to today. So what do I mean by emotional contact or rapport? It means you're in the same vibrational space. How do you do that? With water, it's all about approach. It's all about creating the setting before you get there. So it's more, and it's about being, in a lot of ways, reconciled with your feeling as well. Now, the moon in Scorpio is not necessarily something that's easily reconciled, because you're excavating the past, right? It's like an emotional forensic, and there can be a lot of hurt with that moon in Scorpio, but today is a day where it can be released. And there's I think the potential for a fair exchange. Investment wise, this is a very interesting day. You know, I did a webinar on Jupiter on Saturday, and one of the things I talked about was Bitcoin, and I said I think Bitcoin is going to go on a run. And wouldn't you know it, yesterday I was reading, why is Bitcoin going up? You may want to attach yourself to that boat for a while. But you also have to be very careful, because one of the things I said is that when Bitcoin makes a really significant run, that there's likely there's a very good chance, not even likely, there's a very good chance that that's when we'll be reaching the peak of a cycle. And the whole idea is to get people once again kind of conned into the whole CBDC thing. So if you're investment oriented, today is a good day to look at those investments. I'd also say it's a pretty good real estate day. If you're in the hunt or you're in the market to buy something, you got this grand triangle all set up, trust your instincts. That doesn't mean that everything is hunky-dory today. We've got this little square going on here with Venus and Mars and Pallas squaring off against Uranus. You know, that's restlessness. I think there's a lot of restlessness in our world right now. And, you know, people want to have fun. I think people are tired of, you know, I think they're tired of the culture wars. I think they're tired of dealing with idiocracy. I think people are looking around and going, like, what happened to our world? Why can't we recreate the way that we used to? And here it's almost an overreach in some ways. So if you're planning on having some fun, just be conscious, mindful, aware that there could be some unexpected circumstances. Let's put it that way, little unexpected circumstances. But I also think with the Venus-Mars conjunction, it has the potential for kind of shared value. And the shared value is the value of the heart. We're dealing with Leo. The one thing I would say about this is that in as much as I've talked about this grand trine and the emotional content, it may not necessarily work in intimate relationships. I know this sounds contradictory. I do think it's there. I do think the quality of the connection is there. But what did I see yesterday? It was this video. I don't know who would do this, but some dude was trying to propose to a woman in a public space. I think it was some kind of a restaurant or something, and it wasn't even a really good restaurant. And what happened? You had these hooligans coming in and essentially disturbing the peace, and did not allow him to pop the question. Right? That's your Mars, Venus, Uranus square. Timing is everything. It's critical. And you don't want to jump the gun. And by God, if you're going to propose to your girlfriend, don't take her to a fucking, you know, Mike's Jersey Subs or something like that. I mean, it wasn't like, it might have been like a Fridays or TJ. It was just not the greatest place to take your fiance. If I was the fiance, if I proposed to somebody at TGI Fridays or the Olive Garden, or it's one of those places, right? If the woman said no, it would be like, would I have a problem with it? Yeah, because I'd be rejected. But at the end of the day, it'd be like, well, what the fuck were you thinking? You were proposing at a TGI Fridays or an Olive Garden. I mean, it's like, if that's the portent for the rest of one's life, you better rethink that dude. He could at least take you to, I don't know, what would be a better place, a not a private restaurant, but a restaurant that's not a chain. And by the way, I'm not insulting any workers of TGI Friday or the Olive Garden. I'm not doing that. You provide us a valuable service. It's just the place where you might have been a Fuddruckers. Is Fuddruckers even in business anymore? I don't know. Final aspect here, we do have these squares with Neptune. Remember, what is said today cannot be retracted. Just remember that. Whatever you share today cannot be retracted, because that's the Neptune square. But you said such and such. Remember that? Remember that? It was last Wednesday. Remember that? Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that. No, it's not. That's not going to fly. It's just not going to fly. The other thing too is that with this square with Neptune, be very mindful of how people respond to you. If you get platitudes, don't settle for a platitude. Don't settle for a yeah. Stay on course here. Stay on path, and continue to clearly, honestly, and deeply state your case and share. All right, there's your astro weather for the day. Let's talk about the star of the day. You probably already know who it is, because if you're paying attention, you'd have seen the chart. It is Nikolai Tesla. You know what's interesting is that Tesla, I like to say Tesla and Elon Musk are born on the same day. Did you know that? You know who else is born today is Rupert Sheldrake, the person who theoretically cracked the code for morphogenetic fields. Now, Tesla's chart is hard to recreate because they were using a Julian calendar, and I didn't have enough time to tweak it into Julian calendar terms. But here we have Tesla as an Aries rising. Though other charts, because you'll go back and you'll go in and you'll see, oh, he's a Taurus rising with Pluto on the ascendant. You know, I'm willing to stake my claim here on a non-Julian calendar that this is this guy's chart. And why do I say that? Well, when I was looking for quotes from Tesla, and I think this is really the best one, he talks. There's a number of pictures here with text that basically say, if you want to have great ideas, you have to be alone. So when I see Aries rising and the true node in Aries and Jupiter in Aries, I'm like, yeah, this fits. This is a guy who has no problem being alone. I find the whole concept of Tesla to be quite fascinating. If you follow any of the work of the Tartarian researchers, there's quite a debate or discussion in that world that questions whether or not Tesla invented all those things. So there's two sort of schools here. One school is that he had a hand in understanding and back engineering, the quote unquote antiquitech. So in that regard, he would play a role, right? But then the other story or narrative for Tesla is that he was kind of a made man, and that the so-called robber barons created Tesla so that they could have a face to the technology that they stumbled upon. Now, when you look at his patents, it's almost humanly impossible for somebody to create the number of patents he did over a period of time in a rather short one. But for the sake of demonstration, we're going to go with the more contemporary, less conspiratorial version of Tesla. that the guy is, kind of the real deal. So what does that look like? Well, again, with this chart, one of the things that jumps out to me, it's kind of interesting. I may have to kind of go back to the conspiratorial thing. He has Mercury in Gemini, so of course he's bright, right? We know he's bright, and it's retrograde. So when you get into Mercury retrograde, you get into things like retrofitting. Oh, interesting. So maybe he did play a role where he was able to take the attendant or available technology and understand it and make it work. I really don't have a problem with that, by the way. I don't have a problem, because if you stumbled upon Antiquitech, you'd sit there and scratch your asshole and say, the fuck do we do with this? Right. And so even in that regard, if this is true, Tesla would play a very important role. But perhaps he played too important of a role, and therefore he didn't conform to just being like, say, I don't know, Elon Musk being the face of a technological set of innovations. But he's super bright, and he has some very interesting Cancerian planets. The thing about Tesla was he was one of these guys that was kind of OCD. Like, if you really watch his like biographies, you'll always see how fastidious he is. He's extremely fastidious, and he does a lot of the things in the same way over and over again. I think we could make a bit of a case with the Sun-Saturn conjunction, and there's a kind of a rigidity with Sun-Saturn, and then you throw Pluto into the mix, and there's a reason why there is a rigidity, or there's a reason why he would do things in a way that were kind of repeatable, right? And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that there's less bandwidth that's used in order to navigate the kind of vagaries of everyday existence. It's sort of like Steve Jobs having nothing but black t-shirts in his closet, which is true. He never had to waste or spend a lot of time figuring out what he was going to wear. And so therefore, that part of his brain could just kind of be dedicated to something else. And if you look at these people, it's very similar, right? They have these similar traits, and they're almost, it's kind of on the spectrum a little bit. And it's kind of like, let me just get this out of the way, and I'll devote the rest of my mental or creative time to the things that really matter. Tesla's kind of in that boat. And clearly he's got a ton of Gemini, right? He's got Mercury. Well, not a ton. I take that back. He's got Mercury, and he's got Pallas way back here. And Pallas is about pattern recognition. So he understands patterns. He understands patterns in a very kind of mental, not necessarily emotional patterns, but clearly mental patterns, and understanding, again, how things work, right? So in as much as he was an inventor, I think he was also a reinventor. That's my sense. The poor guy's got, a borderline balsamic moon here, and in Taurus. So of course the story here is about letting go and having to let go of a lot of his creations, including free energy. And he's unusual, right? He's just wired differently with this moon Uranus conjunction in Taurus, just totally wired differently. It's interesting because we're coming up on the Uranus return of Tesla. And I wonder, how this plays out in his quote unquote birthday twin, Elon Musk. Like, what new little toy is Elon Musk going to unveil sometime early next year? Because this is Tesla's Uranus return. What's interesting too is that usually with Uranus and Scorpio is the innovative factor in the innovative force. And when we get into Uranus and Taurus, we get into deconstruction and even to some extent de-evolution. So the more that I look at this, the more that I look at his chart and see this Mercury retrograde and Uranus and Taurus and the moon conjuncting it, the more that I think that he was a reinventor. That's my sense. He was a reinventor, and he was dealing with the artifacts and the technology of another age. My 2 cents here. So the other thing that we can see is that he really gets fucked over, right? He gets really fucked over by his partners. He gets fucked over by JP Morgan, anybody that he really goes into business with. There's Mars over there on the other side of the chart in Libra, South Node conjuncting Libra. So there's a little bit of, I would say, passive aggressiveness going on in Tesla's chart. And I think he probably gave things away. I mean, even with the Jupiter-Mars opposition and Jupiter over there in the ascendant, he's a pioneer. Like, even though I think he's reinventing things, I'm just going to be honest. I think he's reinventing things. There's nothing wrong with that. Not everybody can reinvent that shit. But I also think that he's getting fucked over. And that's where that Mars comes into play. It's the T-square. And I think Tesla, based on his chart, is loyal. He has loyalty. But at the same time, that loyalty isn't rewarded. In fact, if anything, it's violated with Mars and Libra. And I think he was somewhat egalitarian in wanting to bring things into balance in the world, but clearly a man ahead of his time, or at least a man who was ahead of the time that preceded him. I'll go in that direction. And even Chiron and Aquarius, people who have Chiron and Aquarius are kind of out there, right? They're out there, and they're not easily accepted. And I think for somebody like Tesla, even if he was a reinventor, and I think there's a lot of merit in being a reinventor, even if he was a reinventor, I think he would have felt very alienated in a lot of ways from these people who wanted to profit off of what he was able to kind of figure out. And I think he probably had very little in terms of like value. Like he's from Croatia, right? I think he's from Croatia, Bosnia Herzegovina. That's that HRV, Bosnia Herzegovina. Like, what does he have in common with the likes of JP Morgan or Thomas Edison, whom he worked for? Again, Mars in the 7th house and kind of getting fucked over, right? He's got nothing in common with these people. He's like from a different world, literally and figuratively. I think he probably had a really hard life, honestly. Especially when you get into these Neptune squares. Neptune square Mercury. That's an interesting square. Is that the plundering of his copyrights, of his inventions? Interesting. Anyway, there's your star of the day. Nikolai Tesla. Boom. All right. So I'm way behind schedule. I got to get over to 15 minutes and crank up a show there. So please join me over there on my website, 15 Minutes of Flame. I'll probably be kicking off at the bottom of the hour. And hopefully tomorrow we'll be on track, on time. I was just kind of gassed today. A lot going on here. All right. Take care. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks for being here and being a part of the Astro Weather.